extremely satisfied with the mummies. Not only were they not afraid of pain and death in battle, they were also remarkably strong. Together with the sand transformation skill, they could even sneak attack from underground. More importantly, they did not need to worry about the transportation of food, water, and supplies. They did not even need to consume food. Was there anything better than this in the world? What the cows ate was grass, and what they squeezed out was milk. The mummies did not even need to eat grass and were not directly milked like cows. In stark contrast, the three long-armed laborers beside him had their mouths split open. Putting aside their ranks, these soldiers could not even survive in the desert. With the harsh living environment of the desert, in the future, we should choose soldiers that do not require transportation of food, water, and supplies. In his thoughts, Richard confirmed the direction of the troop development in Twilight City. Bring the desert wolves back to the territory. After dispelling the plague, the desert wolves had undoubtedly become precious food. For Twilight City, which only had a few days of rations, this was simply a life-saving straw. The long-armed laborers cheered and lifted the desert wolves in a flurry. However, 3 long-armed laborers were barely able to lift one. The mummy had no choice but to participate in the transportation of the desert wolves' corpses. From the looks of it, Richard estimated that a desert wolf weighed more than 200 pounds. A few of the larger ones weighed more than 300 pounds. With such a big harvest, his mood became more and more cheerful. When the wolves were placed in front of the Lord's mansion, they immediately caused a commotion among the residents. They squeezed into a pile, tiptoed, and stretched their necks to look inside. "Oh my God, what a big wild wolf!" "Hiss, these wild beasts are probably at the elite level. These are desert wild wolves. They're extremely ferocious. 10 ordinary people, one of them can only wait for death. Lord, you're too strong. It's truly amazing." Everyone was stunned. Carew, who had just been appointed as the administrative officer, pushed through the crowd and squeezed to Richard's side. His old body felt a little younger after seeing the wild wolves on the ground. He respectfully held his chest and saluted. "Good day, Lord." Richard nodded slightly. "Later, get someone to cut up these wild wolves and store their fur. Some of them will be made into fur cloth, and some will be used as food for the residents." Carew immediately bowed in excitement. "Thank you for your generosity. It is our honor to meet such a great lord like you." Richard did not care about the other party's gratitude. These people were all the wealth of Twilight City. There was nothing strange about feeding his lamb with grass. He was still waiting for the other party to produce milk. No need to be so polite. As the Lord of Twilight City, it is only right for me to protect you. There are still 10 desert wolves' corpses that have yet to be retrieved. Send someone to carry them back with the 4 mummies. Carew was pleasantly surprised. There were truly more? "All right, Lord." Richard nodded and continued to ask, "How are the residents doing?" Reporting, there are a total of 15 people who have specialties. Among them, there are 5 basic blacksmiths, 3 basic carpenters, 5 basic tailors, and 2 basic builders. Lifestyle classes were divided into basic, intermediate, advanced, special, master, and extraordinary classes. The higher the level of the items that could be produced. Although they were all basic talents, there were 15 out of 100 people. This ratio was not bad. Richard looked at the residents beside him. "Send 5 blacksmiths to work in the blacksmith shop. I have already occupied an iron mine. It won't be long before I can produce a large number of them. 5 tailors can take care of the wild wolf's fur and see how to use it better." After making some arrangements, Richard pointed at the 3 long-armed laborers who were somewhat reserved. "I've already conquered the 3 resource points you mentioned. At the same time, I subdued these long-armed laborers in the quarry. There are a total of 30 of them. I've placed 7 in the quarry, 10 in the iron mine, and 10 in the logging field. The remaining 3 here, let them transport food and water to these resource points in the future." Twilight City's territory attributes were very special. Under Richard's protection, the residents of Twilight City would not get lost in the desert, and at the same time, their stamina consumption would be reduced by 20%. These 3 extra drudges were put to good use. Carew immediately agreed. "As you wish." Soon, the residents who received the order began to get busy. More than 30 strong residents were led by 4 mummies to carry the wild wolf corpses. Another 4 or 5 residents brought 3 long-armed laborers with dry food and water to the resource point to deliver supplies. The residents who remained in the territory began to get busy. A wolf weighing 200 to 300 pounds was a lot of work. The residents moved the wild wolf to the only well in Twilight City. Then, they took out a big pot from somewhere and began to boil water. Richard stood at the side and watched this scene silently. The lively scene was like the New Year celebrations when he was a child. The residents with smiles on their faces were particularly infectious. The more rustic they were, the more touching they were. His sense of strangeness to this world had quietly disappeared a lot. After observing the surroundings for a moment, his gaze was attracted by the well. Water was the absolute lifeline in the desert. The construction of the well in Twilight City was very primitive. Deep pits were dug in the ground to the location of the underground water. And stones were built around the pits to hold the soil in place so that it would not collapse. After the underground water seeped out, they tied the barrel with a rope and hung it up. This well was placed in the home of an ordinary resident and could be used by a dozen people without any problems. However, this was Twilight City. It was Richard's territory. With only this well, what would happen to the development of the city in the future? Richard felt a little uneasy. While he was thinking, the white-haired Carew walked to his side. The old man wiped the sweat off his forehead. His thin and weak body was like a tree that had shed leaves in winter. However, his old body could not offset his excitement. "My lord, I have just estimated that after removing the fur, bones, and internal organs, each wild wolf can leave about 150 units of meat. 25 wild wolves can produce a total of nearly 4,000 units. According to the system's calculations, 1 kilogram of food was 1 unit. Moreover, the internal organs and bones can also be eaten. Just this food alone will be enough for us to last for 3 days. The meat can be dried and stored. 4,000 units are enough for us to consume for 20 days. With this calculation, including our original food, our current reserves are enough for us to consume for 25 days. Save a little bit, and a month will be easy." Carew's tone was exceptionally excited, and the wrinkles on his face had eased a lot. Richard nodded. The harvest from this trip was indeed rich. 3 resource points, 30 long-armed laborers, level 2 mummies, and a huge amount of food from the hunt. It could be said to be a huge profit. But at this time, Richard's mind was attracted by other things. Pointing at the well in front of him, he asked in a deep voice, "Is there a water source around the territory?" Carew shook his head. "No, we didn't find it. It was because we found this well a few days ago that we decided to leave it behind." After saying that, Carew looked a little hesitant. "My lord, we might be able to arrange for a portion of our people to search for a water source, or rebuild a well. The water output from this well isn't enough. These few days, the water supply for over 100 people is very tight. If this goes on, I'm afraid the water in the well will dry up." Richard raised his eyebrows. Lack of water was a fatal thing in the desert. If there was nothing to eat, they could go hunting. If there was no water to drink, they would die. They couldn't see anything yet, but if they developed in the future, this small well that used primitive methods to fetch water would probably be unable to bear the burden. The excitement of hunting more than 20 wild wolves decreased a lot. "I'll think of a way to deal with this. Go and see if anyone knows how to find a water source or dig a well." "Yes, Lord." When Carew left, Richard directly opened the forum chat. He searched for keywords "lack of water sources." Instantly, hundreds of thousands of posts appeared. "My territory is high up in the mountains. There's no water around. What should I do? I won't die of thirst, right? Asking for help. How can I solve this problem without fresh water on the territory? Not to mention distillation, the efficiency is too low. The amount of water distilled is not even enough for the residents of my territory to drink around. There's a level 10 giant bear outside my territory. It's been blocking me for half a day. I'm dying of thirst. Who can give me some water to drink?" Richard was dumbfounded. Most of these posts were asking for help. Richard only found a valuable one after sifting through them for a long time. "I just picked up a 3-star treasure chest in the wild, but after opening it, I only got 1 treasure fragment, spring water fragment. 3 fragments can be combined into a 1-star resource treasure, spring water. What the FCK is the use of this? When I went out, I was surrounded by river. I regret it. If I had known earlier, I would have sold it in exchange for some food. Damn it, there were 200 refugees in the territory just now, and tomorrow we will run out of food. 1-star resource treasure? Spring water?" Richard's eyes immediately lit up. These sand sculpture players were indeed valuable. After reading the post a few times, Richard opened the trading market. He searched for a resource treasure, spring water. But to his disappointment, there was no such treasure. Then, he searched for a few similar words consecutively, but all he found was a vast expanse of haze. At this stage, there are still too few people who can obtain a 3-star treasure chest. Moreover, even if they obtain it, they might not be able to obtain a similar resource treasure. After closing the trading market, Richard found a post again. After giving himself the name of Ching Chu, he sent a private message. Ching Chu, big brother, I just saw your post. Would you like to sell the spring water fragment? After sending the message, Richard quickly received a response. Where's your F-King Italian cannon? You want it? How many resources can you offer? The corner of Richard's mouth twitched when he saw this name. Ching Chu, the initial resources are too precious. I can't offer much, but I just hunted a wild wolf. Where's your F-King Italian cannon, wild wolf? The kind that's not much bigger than a dog? What can that thing do? Richard went directly to the side of the busy residence and chose a medium-sized wild wolf. Ding, do you want to sell the desert wolf's corpse? Please set the price. 100,000 gold coins. After making the decision, the desert wolf in front of him disappeared. Richard opened the forum chat again and sent a message. Ching Chu, I have already put the desert wolf on the shelves. You go to the exchange channel and search for it. Desert wolf, sold for 100,000 gold coins. Not long after the message was sent, the other party replied. Where's your F-King Italian cannon? Awesome, even an elite 3-star wild wolf can be killed. I've already been blocked by a group of elite 1-star wild wolves. How the FCK did I pick the farmer's troop lair? Boss, what level is your troop lair? Ching Chu, let's talk about a deal. Where's your F-King Italian cannon? We can trade, but one is not enough. Moreover, wolves are social animals. Boss, you must have killed more than one. Ching Chu, my territory is also very short of food. It's impossible to trade too much. Moreover, yours is only a fragment. I don't know when it will be synthesized. If it's too expensive, then forget it. The other party didn't reply for a long time. Just when Richard thought that the guy didn't want to trade, the other party appeared again. Where's your F-King Italian cannon? Boss, you hunted a desert wolf, and you're willing to exchange precious food for a fragment of resources, treasure, and spring water at this time. Your territory is in the desert, right? Richard raised his eyebrows. Just as he was about to say no more nonsense, the other party sent him a message. Where's your F-King Italian cannon? I understand that a fragment of the resource treasure spring water cannot be exchanged for much food, but I wonder if you're interested in this thing? Russian olive seed, resource treasure. Level, 1 star. Range, 10 mu. Characteristics, must be planted in the desert, requires sufficient water for irrigation, ripens once a month. Description, a resource treasure exclusive to the desert. Richard's eyes widened. Russian olive seed? Ripens once a month? Moreover, this was not a resource treasure fragment like spring water, which could be used directly after obtaining it. Ching Chu, 2 resource treasures can be obtained from 1 3-star treasure chest. Ads by Pub Future fully funded scholarships for African students to study abroad. Fully funded scholarships for African students to study abroad. Ad. Where's your F-King Italian cannon? Who said 2 resource treasures can be obtained from 1 3-star treasure chest? 1 3-star treasure chest can produce 1 resource treasure. I have opened 2 3-star treasure chests. Richard was speechless. This guy's luck was too good, right? How long has it been? He already obtained 2 3-star treasure chests. He must be cheating. Where's your F-King Italian cannon? Boss, are you interested in this treasure? I don't want much, just 30 wild wolves will be enough. Ching Chu, wake up, please. Resources and treasures may seem precious, but to every desert lord, they are huge pits. How much water will be consumed every day after planting the olive seed? How many people can survive? Moreover, they mature too slowly. Don't you know what a month means? Not only do I need to expend energy to care for them, but I also need to delay the progress of the development of the territory. In the future, there will definitely be more similar resource treasures. When that time comes, the price will definitely be lower. Right now, this thing doesn't have much value to me. Let's talk about the transaction of the spring water fragments. After reading this paragraph, the other party fell into a long silence. Richard no longer responded. He was waiting for the guy to speak. The olive seeds could mature in a month. This was an irresistible temptation for Richard. If Richard could get it, it meant that Twilight City would have a stable source of food. As for investment, wasn't that nonsense? Without investment, there would be no harvest. But the essence of negotiation was to not reveal one's trump card. Whoever had a small demand could take the initiative. And the other party's post had already exposed his extreme lack of food. Now, the initiative was in Richard's hands. It was only the first day of the game. It was not easy to find a suitable seller from the desert camp. Where's your F-King Italian cannon? No, this is from a 3-star treasure chest, not a cent less. I've already put it on the shelves, you can buy it yourself. Opening the trading market, he found the olive seeds and spring water fragments. Russian olive seed, 1 star, sold for 5,000 units of food or 30 desert wolves. Spring water fragments, 1 star, sold for 1,000 units of food or 10 desert wolves. Richard laughed. Little friend, are you fishing in front of me? I really thought it was fishing. He immediately closed the forum chat. Richard removed the desert wolves from the shelves and let the residents continue to deal with them. He no longer paid any attention to that guy. The other party had even exposed his underwear. Now he was the one fishing. The residents only finished their work when it was dark. After dealing with more than 20 wolves, all of them were exhausted. A middle-aged man in a short robe entered the Lord's mansion with a respectful expression after confirming that the food was cooked. However, under the gaze of the mummy guard's empty eyes, he did not dare to enter the hall at all. He only dared to shout in a low voice. Lord, good evening. We have already prepared the food. Please have your meal. When Richard heard the somewhat perturbed voice coming from outside the door, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. He got up and walked out of the mansion. In the open space outside the door, hundreds of residents were staring at the bubbling meat in the big pot. The fragrance almost made a child cry. Richard, who hadn't eaten for a day, was also excited. Seeing him, the residents turned their heads to salute him reluctantly. Lord, good evening. Lord. Looking at the crowd who looked like they wanted to stuff their eyes into the pot, Richard smiled. He took a few steps forward and swept his gaze across the crowd. Richard spoke in a clear voice. My people, today is your first day in Twilight City. It is a memorable day. Because today, you have become a member of Twilight City. You have become my people. From this moment on, all of us will share the glory and disgrace of Twilight City. In the future, this land will be filled with hope because of our joint efforts. The life that each of you dreams of will be realized through our hard work. Remember today. In the future, you will be proud. Now eat. The last sentence immediately made the residents excited. Long live, Lord. Praise you, great Lord. Thank you for your grace. Richard was at a loss for words. After a period of excitement, it was time for a happy meal. The organs and bones of more than 20 wild wolves gave everyone a great meal. Everyone was given a big bowl, and there were 2 delicious meals the next day. Richard felt the same. Although there wasn't much seasoning, the wild wolf meat was too delicious. A simple salt could make a first-class delicacy. After a comfortable meal, Richard slowly returned to the mansion. The night was too dangerous. Richard didn't have any plans to go out, so safety was more important. When he entered the hall, he suddenly found 2 rosy-faced 18-year-old girls with blonde hair waiting for him. After asking, Richard found out that it was Karu who had sent them to serve him. You are using this to test your skills? Richard didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After thinking about it, he realized that he had already transmigrated, so it wasn't a big deal for his life to be rotten. He felt at ease as he finished washing up under the 2 girls' service. However, when the 2 girls shyly suggested warming up the bed, Richard still strictly rejected it. The harmonious troop was one aspect. The main thing was that the 2 girls didn't meet his aesthetic standards. He preferred Oriental girls who had a lingering charm. The 2 girls turned their heads back 3 times and left regretfully. This was a chance to reach the sky in one step. They actually did not grasp it. What a pity. The next morning, Richard woke up. After washing up, he thought of something and opened the forum chat. In the next second, hundreds of private messages appeared. 6 o'clock in the evening. Where's your F-King Italian cannon? Why haven't you bought it yet? 7 o'clock in the evening. Where's your F-King Italian cannon, boss, where are you? 8 o'clock in the evening. Where's your F-King Italian cannon? Is the price too high? We can still discuss this. 9 o'clock in the evening. Where's your F-King Italian cannon? How about 25 wild wolves? I'll change the price now. 10 o'clock in the evening. Where's your F-King Italian cannon? Boss, I was wrong. Don't ignore me. 20, last price. It can't be less. 11 o'clock in the evening. Where's your F-King Italian cannon, boss, answer me. I'm really in a hurry. 12 o'clock in the evening. Where's your F-King Italian cannon, can I call you big brother? 20 really can't be less. 1 o'clock, at dawn. Where's your F-King Italian cannon, big brother, just buy them. Those refugees are going to use up all my food tonight. I've already promised them to solve the food problem tomorrow. I can't go back on my word. 2 o'clock, at dawn. Where's your F-King Italian cannon, big brother, when you get up tomorrow, call me back when you see this message. 6 o'clock in the morning. Where's your F-King Italian cannon? Big brother, please, hurry up and buy it. If those residents don't see the rice put into the pot today, I'm afraid they'll rebel. 7 o'clock in the morning. Where's your F-King Italian cannon, big brother, have you woken up? Those residents have already woken up. Please reply to me. 8 o'clock in the morning. Where's your F-King Italian cannon, big brother, 15 wild wolves, if you want them, buy them immediately, no more words. 9 o'clock in the morning. Where's your F-King Italian cannon, big brother, I'm going to die. Those guys have been asking about the food, I can't fool them anymore. They said that they would leave today without food. If those bastards with big waists were to really start fighting, my farmers and soldiers wouldn't be able to withstand it. Big brother, save me.
Richard didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw the other party's messages. This guy also had a top-grade item. He dared to fish without a trump card. Richard opened the trading market. The price of the other party's one-star resource treasure, the olive seed, had been reduced to 2,000 units of food or 15 desert wolves. The spring water fragment treasure also had been sold for 500 units of food or 3 desert wolves. That guy obviously couldn't hold on any longer. But even so, no one cared. Who would have extra food to buy such a useless treasure at this time? He searched the forum chat for posts about the olive seeds and the spring water fragments and found that they were all sent by "Where's your F***King Italian cannon?" Richard clicked on them and found them funny. "Where's your F***King Italian cannon? Come quickly, buy the precious strategic treasure from the 3-star treasure chest. The 10 Russian olive seed will mature once a month. As long as one buys it, they will be able to harvest a batch of food every month. It is the best choice for the desert lords. The cornerstone of hegemony. As long as one gathers the 3 pieces of the spring water fragment, they will be able to obtain a spring core. The desert lords who lacked water practically could not miss this. One can find these 2 treasures in the exchange market by searching." Richard pondered about it. It's not a big deal for you to boast about yourself, but the reply below is quite interesting. First floor, are you crazy? Do you sell 2,000 units of food for a lousy treasure? And it can only be grown in the desert. Don't you know the price of food now? Second floor, as a random desert lord, I just want to say that the owner is a retard. That olive seed is not bad, but the description clearly states that it needs sufficient irrigation. Who the hell can afford this? Not to mention the ridiculous price of selling 2,000 units of food. Do you know what it means to have 15 desert wolves? That is a level 3, elite 3-star group monster. Who can kill 15 desert wolves on the first day? Why didn't you go to heaven with such a big nose? Third floor, I seriously want these treasures. Can you give me a lower price? I'll give you 300 units of food for the olive seeds I got after killing a wild camel. I can't bear to eat them. Fourth floor, the treasures are so expensive. They look good, but they're useless. Don't you feel bad using these little resources to exchange for something else? Fifth floor, I have nothing to say. Where's your F***King Italian cannon? At first, you would argue a little, but in the end, it's just spat. You wouldn't dare to talk back. No wonder you're so anxious. The guy's defense was interrupted by the sand sculpture players. They still liked to be vicious. Even in a different world, it hadn't changed. After thinking for a while, Richard sent that guy a message. Ching Xiu, the desert wolves harvested yesterday have been dealt with already. You're too late. The other party replied instantly. Where's your F***King Italian cannon? Oh my god, you finally appeared. Don't try to scare me. I've already asked around. There are at least 7 or 8 desert wolves that appear at the same time. With such a large one, even if you remove the skin, bones, and internal organs, a few combined can produce at least 2,000 units of meat. It's impossible to finish them in one day. Just buy it. Xingqiu, I can only produce 800 units of desert wolf meat. Where's your F*King Italian cannon? The Russian olive seed can be sold only for so little money? That's too cheap. Xingqiu, who told you that it's the olive seed for 800? I'm talking about the 2 treasures for 800. Where's your F*King Italian cannon? You are ruthless. But I will never give in. I will never sell them even if I die. Xingqiu, hear me out. Where's your F*King Italian cannon? Sai, big brother, speak. I am listening. Xingqiu, I can produce 800 units of wild wolf meat in exchange for your resource treasures. After half a month, I can continue to give another 800 units. After a month, I could produce another 800 units.
The two signed the system contract once for 100 gold coins. It could guarantee the interests of both parties. If one party breaches the contract, it would be punishable as breaking the contract as discussed. After Richard signed the contract with the other party, he went to the warehouse to get 800 units of wild wolf meat. The 2 resource treasures obtained from a 3-star treasure chest also appeared in his hands smoothly. He only spent 800 units of meat in exchange for 2 resource treasures. This transaction was a bloody profit. As for the remaining 1,600 units of meat, he would supplement the shortage over time. In other words, the 800 units of meat after half a month would not have the same expensive price. The purchasing power would devalue. Richard carefully looked at the 2 resource treasures in his hands. The Russian olive seed looked like a Russian olive. It emitted a faint fluorescence. The spring water fragment was 1/3 the size of a palm, like a broken crystal, but it did not cut Richard's hand. Russian olive seed, resource treasure, level, 1-star range, 10 mu characteristics, must be planted in the desert, requires sufficient water for irrigation, ripens once a month. Description: a resource treasure exclusive to the desert. Spring water fragment, resource treasure, level, 1-star water output, small, LSB status, incomplete, 1/3, characteristics, after placement, the fragment will form a spring that will not dry up. Description: a fragment of a resource treasure. Only when it is complete can it be used. Holding the Russian olive seed, a stream of information immediately gushed out of Richard's mind. After selecting an area and placing the Russian olive seed in the central, olives would grow out rapidly in a short period. Richard was in a great mood. After instructing Karu, Richard placed the food and water that he had prepared beforehand into the system space. At the same time, he opened the system map and looked at it carefully. Today, I'll scan the map with the logging field in the west as the starting point. For the next few days, I'll explore in a clockwise direction. After making a decision, Richard left the territory with 14 mummies. Although it was only the second time he had walked in the desert, Richard had practically adapted to it the day before, and his face was much calmer. It was lonely, vast, and majestic. The desert was always so magnificent, and it made people feel heroic. It was still early, and the yellow sand had not been burned by the sun. With a goal and direction, the group of people moved quickly. It waved its hand to signal to go back. Nothing was blocking its line of sight in the desert. Richard immediately noticed something strange. After making sure that no enemies were attacking, he stepped forward to check the details. Richard came to the side of the mummy that was warning him. Under its signal, he climbed up a small sand dune that was about 10 meters tall in front of him. Richard lowered his body and looked forward. On the sand dune 100 meters away, 3 squads of soldiers from the wild appeared in front of him. These humanoid creatures had rock-like muscles all over their bodies. They were bulging out one by one and were particularly eye-catching. Even a bodybuilder would be ashamed to death in front of these creatures. Their bodies were 2 meters tall, and their every move was filled with a terrifying sense of power. Their backs were slightly bent, and 3 rows of dagger-like spikes grew on their backs, making them look ferocious and terrifying. What was even more surprising was that these strange creatures were surrounded by groups of desert bees flying around them. The desert bees that he saw earlier had surely come from this place. Knack Trolls adds by PubFuture, level 4 potential, elite 3-star skills, hard body, D rank, body as hard as a rock, able to ignore the bite of ordinary beasts. All out heavy strike, E rank, The next attack after charging up will release 200% of its strength. Rock body, E rank dash. It will not die unless its head is chopped off. Race talent, possesses exceptionally strong defense, ordinary weapons are unable to pierce through it. Fetters, the knack trolls feed on honey, raising more than 3 layers of desert bees, automatically earning 10 experience points every day. When it raises more than 5 layers of desert bees, it automatically receives 20 experience points every day. When it raises more than 10 layers of desert bees will give birth to desert bees and produce golden honey, which can increase the potential of the knack troll. Description: they love to eat honey. La 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 tilde. Richard's eyes widened. Good heavens, there are such strange species in the desert, they look so ferocious, and they truly eat honey. And in this vast desert, where would those desert bees go to gather honey? The world is so big. There are indeed all kinds of strange things. Looking at the shackle of the knack trolls, Richard suddenly became interested. Eating honey can give experience. No wonder these trolls are level 4. I wonder if these desert bees can be moved away? Thinking of the sweetness of the honey, Richard was tempted. Although it felt strange to raise bees in the desert, Richard could even raise wild monsters, so why couldn't he? He refused to give up. But the problem was that the enemy had a total of 3 squads. One squad had 10 people, one squadron had 10 squads, and one legion had 10 squadrons. This was the basic unit structure of the game's shining era. It was a 10-point system, and it was easy to remember. Richard was facing such a large number of soldiers with potential as high as an elite 3-star, and they were still a type of soldiers that specialized in defense. He felt that it was somewhat troublesome. Although the mummies were strong, their defenses were still a problem whether or not they could break through. The strength in my hands is still too weak. After accumulating some resources, I will need to build a second troops lair. While his thoughts were a mess, Richard took another look at the mummy's attributes. Corpse bandage, E rank. Reduces physical damage by 30%. The bandage carries plague. The infected person will enter a weakened state, and all stats will be reduced by 20%. If not treated, they will gradually die. If not treated, they will gradually die. After muttering softly, Richard's eyes gradually lit up. The opponent's defense is amazing. I'm afraid that using normal methods will not be effective. Although the sand transformation skill is strong, it can only last for 5 minutes. If we attack vigorously, then if we can't finish the battle within 5 minutes, we might suffer a strong counterattack from the opponent. At that time, the situation will be out of control. Why don't we try this passive? A group of troops in the desert. Do they have the ability to dispel the mummy's curse? The other party's strong defense is just physical. There's no magic resistance at all in their attributes. Thinking of this, Richard made up his mind. He had always been a man of action. He would do whatever he said. Not to mention the honey that made his heart itch, it was worth a try if Richard could gain a lot of experience from hunting the knack trolls. He might even be able to find some treasures inside. Where's your F-King Italian cannon was also stunned. Where's your F-King Italian cannon, big brother, is this a payment by installments? Ching Chu, 800 units of wild wolf meat is enough for you to last for some time. That is meat, not rice or flour. Moreover, I don't have much food in my hands. I still have hundreds of people to feed. I don't have that many resources to trade with you. If you don't accept, then forget it. I have food in my hands. I have 20 billion people to feed. Don't tell me I can't buy similar resources and treasures. Where's your F-King Italian cannon immediately became anxious. He was still waiting for the rice to be in the pot. If those refugees ran away, his territory would be in chaos. Where's your F-King Italian cannon? Don't, big brother. All right. I agree, but we have to sign a contract. Ching Chu, no problem. Richard led the mummies around the sand dune and slowly approached the knack trolls from the downwind. When the distance was right, Richard let the mummies directly turn into sand. 14 mummies merged into the desert and left no trace. A moment later, the knack trolls, who were lazily sunbathing in the bushes, suddenly heard a rustling sound. However, these wild knack trolls, who ate honey, were much less vigilant than the desert wolves. It was not until the mummies' bodies crawled up from the ground and even passed through their bodies that these ferocious-looking monsters woke up and roared as they counterattacked. The knack trolls used their sandbag-sized fists to ruthlessly hit the mummies' bodies. Whoosh! After accumulating strength, their fists even produced a sonic boom. However, no matter how terrifying the attacks were, they hit the mummies' bodies as if they were hitting the sand. They could only feel a slight obstruction before they passed through the mummies' bodies. Instead, as they came into direct contact with the mummies, their rock-like skin started to turn blue. Their powerful aura suddenly decreased by a large margin. The mummies' curse took effect. But the weaker their body, the crazier the Nak trolls became. 3 teams of Nak trolls swarmed forward, surrounding the 14 mummies and launching a storm-like attack. The mummies also retaliated mercilessly. They could easily tear apart the desert wolf's body and attack the Nak trolls with their sharp claws. But they could only leave white scratches on the Nak trolls' bodies. They could not break through the defense. The Nak trolls with all their attributes and defense were much more difficult to deal with than the desert wolves. After a full 2 minutes, the mummies confirmed that all the Nak trolls were infected with the curse. Then, their bodies quickly merged into the sand under the roars of the opponents. The mummies disappeared without a trace. No matter how much the Nak trolls roared and raged, they could not stop the mummies after they turned into sand. After the mummies left, the Nak trolls furiously punched the ground with their fists. Huge pits were created. Yellow sand splashed in the air. The desert bees in the air felt the Nak trolls and also buzzed. After the mummies crawled out of the yellow sand, Richard immediately took them away from this area. They came to a sand dune hundreds of meters away and carefully observed the movements of the Nak trolls. The Nak trolls furiously stirred up the sand. After venting their anger, they gradually regained their calm when they saw that the enemies had not appeared for a long time. However, the faint blue aura on their bodies did not disappear. Instead, it gradually showed signs of deepening. But the Nak trolls' bodies were too strong. There were no obvious changes for a while. After observing for a long time, a smile appeared on Richard's face. The plan was successful. As expected, these Nak trolls did not have any means to dispel the undead curse. Now it was enough to wait for the curse to devour them. However, with the physique of the Nak trolls, it would not work for a few hours. There was no need to waste time. After making sure that there were no casualties, Richard continued to explore the west with the bandaged mummies. He was quite looking forward to what they would encounter next. After leaving the area where the Nak trolls were, Richard became even more careful. The mummies that were originally scouting the way turned from 4 to 8. They spread out in groups of 2 in a fan shape. Each group was about 300 to 400 meters away from Richard. If there was trouble, they could be summoned immediately. This greatly increased the scope of the search. Not long after, this strategy worked. Ding, your troops have been attacked by a group of desert gnomes. Richard had warned them. The mummies that encountered desert gnomes did not fight with them. Instead, they quickly retreated. He immediately gathered the mummies that had spread out. When Richard and the mummies got closer, he also saw the appearance of the soldiers that attacked the mummies in the desert. They were about 1.5 meters tall, holding a dried wooden stick in their hands. Their skin was green with yellow spots, very close to the desert. Their faces were extremely ugly, like freshly kneaded dough that fell on the uneven ground and was stepped on. Desert Gnome. Level 2. Potential Ordinary 1 star. Skill, Wah. 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 Raises morale by shouting. Race talent, bullies the weak and fears the strong. Cowards fear death. Fetters, grease under the feet. When the number of enemies is less than 10%, escape speed increases by 20%. When the number of enemies is less than 20%, escape speed increases by 30%. Description: don't come over. If you come over again, I will run. This attribute was amazing. Richard didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had thought that it was some powerful character. This group of short green-skinned creatures held wooden sticks and madly chased after the 2 mummies. The enemy had more than 4 teams, and they looked quite impressive. However, when the desert gnomes saw a large number of enemies coming, their charging and shouting immediately slowed down. Seeing this, Richard was afraid that these guys would run away, so he waved his hand. Kill them. The mummies were like ferocious tigers coming out of their cages. They let out an extremely hoarse roar, and the indistinct feeling sent chills down people's spines. The green-skinned desert gnomes were stunned. They turned their heads to look at their companions beside and found that they had several times more people than the opponents. Its morale was immediately boosted. They rushed forward while screaming. The mummy that was the first to rush into the desert gnomes immediately activated its unparalleled mode. Its shriveled fingers were now sharper than a razor. As it waved them around, those desert gnomes were like lambs lining up to die. One claw after another. Under the immense power, even if the desert gnomes used a wooden stick to block, the only outcome would be that the wooden stick would break and their bodies would be torn apart. Kai. Blood splattered and scattered on the ground. Corpses fell to the ground one after another. In just one round, only 2 out of the 4 teams of desert gnomes were left. Looking at the miserable looks of their companions, the remaining desert gnomes were immediately scared out of their wits. They did not even bother to run away, so they directly knelt and kowtowed. "Great Lord! We are willing to submit to you and become your humble servants." Ding! The desert gnomes were defeated by your troop. You have obtained 40 experience points. Due to your strength, the remaining desert gnomes are willing to submit to you. Do you want to accept? Richard's mouth twitched as he watched the desert gnomes shatter like paper. He thought about it. Although these guys were cowardly and useless in battle, they could still be used for work or as cannon fodder. After choosing to accept, Richard waved his hand and made the mummies stop. Seeing that the death gods around them had stopped, the desert gnomes finally dared to take a deep breath. However, the bean-sized sweat on their foreheads almost flowed down like tears. Richard walked closer. The blood around him made him frown slightly, but that was all. After a few battles, his mental endurance had a qualitative leap. He was adapting to this world in an extremely strong state. He stared at the desert gnome in front of him. "Where did you come from? Why did you attack my troop?" The desert gnomes who were questioned panicked and spoke in a trembling voice. "Great Lord, we were also forced into a corner. Those damn temple guards seized our territory and expelled us. We need food, you need food, so you attacked the mummies? What was going on in your heads?" Richard was in disbelief for a long time. "You guys aren't afraid of meat and vegetables." However, the temple guards that the desert gnomes mentioned piqued his interest. Was this a dungeon or a quest? Temple guards. There's a temple there? Yes, Lord, there's a very scary temple. Where is that? When the desert gnomes heard this, they were so scared that they shivered. Their bodies couldn't stop trembling, and their eyes were filled with fear. They are too terrifying. All of our tribesmen have been killed. Cut the crap. The desert gnomes were shocked and quickly said. In our territory, we have to walk half a sun away from here. What do you mean by half a sun? Richard wanted to kill these creatures with a slap. How many people are there? How strong are they? I'm not sure. They are too many and too strong. All the tribesmen they met are dead. What does the temple look like? We only took a look at it from a long distance. We're not sure. Richard shook his head. These green-skinned creatures were really useless. They did not even know the enemy's situation even though their entire clan had been destroyed. They were able to run out because of the fetters, right? He was too lazy to ask any more. Lead the way. These words immediately made the desert gnomes' faces turn bitter. However, due to the mummies' powerful pressure, they could only nod. One of them pursed his dry lips. Great Lord, do you have any water? Richard unhappily took out a wooden bucket filled with water from the system space. He watched the 20 desert gnomes gurgle dry. After drinking their fill, the listless desert gnomes immediately came to life and began to lead the way. As they walked, they told Richard how terrifying the temple guards were and desperately tried to dissuade him from exploring. Richard naturally couldn't be bothered with them, but from their stammering words, he obtained quite a bit of information. These desert gnomes were aborigines. They were not recruited by any troop slayer. They had been living in that area for decades. The temple had suddenly appeared a few days ago. Subsequently, that area had been occupied by the temple's guards. Not only was the enemy powerful, but there were also many of them. Hundreds of desert gnomes had been slaughtered by a small team of the enemy. More he talked, the more curious Richard became. This seemed to be a high-level stronghold of the field troop. If they captured it, who knew what good things they could get out of it? With some excitement, Richard urged the desert gnomes to speed up. It had to be said that the desert gnomes' instinct of being afraid of death was indeed powerful. Under their leadership, they did not encounter any other field troops. However, with the temptation of the temple, Richard did not have the mood to care about anything else. After nearly 40 minutes, the desert gnome leading the way pointed at a large bush not far away in fear. Great Lord, that temple is inside. Richard was shocked. Thank you for listening this, and please, if you need more, please drop comment.